First Contact Protocol. The message came on a Tuesday morning, though time meant little in the depths of space. The Galactic Council's communications center on Nexus Station buzzed with the usual chatter of 1,000 different species conducting their daily business. Trade disputes, territorial agreements, and the endless paperwork of keeping peace between civilizations that had been arguing for millennia. Then the new signal arrived. Senior Communications Officer Zethkri nearly spilled his morning stimulant when the translation software finished processing the transmission. The message was crude by galactic standards, broadcast on primitive radio frequencies that most species had abandoned centuries ago. But the content was clear enough to make his foreheart skip a beat. To whom it may concern, the message began in what the computer identified as the dominant language of a species calling themselves humans. We are the people of Earth, located in what you probably call Sector 7 Alpha. We have achieved faster than light travel and wish to make contact with galactic civilization. We request permission to meet with your representatives to discuss Earth's entry into the galactic community. Zethkri read the message 3 times before calling his supervisor. Within an hour, the message had reached the highest levels of the Council. Within 6 hours, emergency sessions were being called across 12 different committees. Ambassador Veltar of the Hegemony Alliance looked around the crowded conference room and shook her head. Another primitive species that just figured out how to leave their home system. How many is this now? The 15th this cycle? 17th, corrected Dr. Kethalar, the Council's chief xenobiologist. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's location. They're from a small yellow star system on the outer rim. Very typical setup. One inhabited world, mostly water, carbon-based life forms. Our long-range scans suggest they're still in the early stages of technological development. The room filled with the familiar sounds of various species expressing boredom or mild interest. This was routine. Every few months, another species would stumble upon faster-than-light travel and come knocking on the galaxy's door like excited children who had just learned to walk. Standard uplift protocol, then? Asked Counselor Jackson, already reaching for the prepared paperwork. The uplift protocol was a well-established process. Send coordinates to a neutral meeting point. Wait for the primitives to arrive in whatever crude vessel they had managed to cobble together. Welcome them to the galaxy with appropriate ceremony. Offer them basic technology and simple trade agreements. Guide them gently into the role of a junior member species, protected and nurtured by their more advanced neighbors. Of course, Veltar agreed, though I admit I'm curious about these humans. Their message was unusually direct. Most species spend their first transmission apologizing for disturbing us or begging for our wisdom. Dr. Kethalar nodded as he pulled up more data. Interesting point. Their communication style is very straightforward. No excessive politeness or religious overtones. Just a simple statement of facts and a clear request. He paused to study some additional readings. Their planet shows signs of significant industrial development. Lots of electromagnetic radiation, orbital installations, even some crude interplanetary infrastructure. Primitive but ambitious, Jackson commented. That usually makes the integration process easier. They'll be grateful for our guidance. The meeting proceeded according to standard procedure. Coordinates were transmitted to Earth with an invitation to send a representative vessel to Nexus Station. The Council's diplomatic staff began preparing the usual welcome materials. Basic star charts, simplified technology gifts, and documentation explaining the galaxy's political structure in terms that primitive minds could understand. Meanwhile, 18 light-years away, the response from space was causing quite a stir in Earth's United Defense Command headquarters. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a room full of Earth's most senior military and political leaders, her expression grim. Gentlemen, ladies, we have a situation. The aliens have responded to our transmission. The room erupted in excited chatter before Chen raised her hand for silence. They've invited us to send a representative vessel to something called Nexus Station. Location coordinates are included. She paused and looked around the room. The question is, what do we send? Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading expert on interstellar relations, spoke first. The diplomatic approach would be to send a science vessel. Small crew, minimal weapons, maximum scientific equipment. Show them we come in peace. Peace. Admiral Chen repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Dr. Webb, with all due respect, We don't know anything about these aliens except that they exist and they have the power to wipe us out if they choose to. Peace is a luxury we can't afford until we know where we stand. General Rodriguez, head of Earth's Space Forces, leaned forward. The Admiral is right. This isn't just first contact. This is potentially the most important moment in human history. How we present ourselves will determine how every alien species treats humanity for the next 1,000 years. But if we show up with a warship, Dr. Webb protested, won't that send the wrong message? What message? Chen asked. That we're not helpless? That we can defend ourselves? That we're not just another primitive species begging for scraps from the galactic table? She stood and began pacing. Look at our history. Every time a technologically advanced civilization encountered a primitive one, what happened? The primitives either adapted and survived, or they were conquered and absorbed. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Earth's history was indeed filled with examples of what happened when advanced civilizations met less developed ones. The results were rarely pleasant for the less advanced side. Captain Marcus Webb of the UDS Leviathan, no relation to the scientist, had been listening quietly from his seat near the back of the room. Now he spoke up. What exactly are you suggesting, Admiral? Chen turned to face him. I'm suggesting we show them that humanity is not to be underestimated. I'm suggesting we send the Leviathan. A collective intake of breath filled the room. The UDS Leviathan was Earth's most advanced destroyer, the pride of the human fleet. 800 meters of cutting-edge military technology, armed with railguns that could punch through a small moon and plasma cannons that could melt through any known material. Its experimental shield systems and stealth coating made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. The Leviathan is a warship, Dr. Webb objected. We'd be arriving at a diplomatic meeting with what amounts to a floating weapons platform. Exactly, Chen replied. We'd be arriving as equals, not as supplicants. The aliens want to meet with us? Fine. But they'll meet with us on our terms, not theirs. Captain Webb studied the star charts showing the location of Nexus Station. It was deep in alien space, surrounded by unknown technologies and potentially hostile forces. Taking a science vessel into that environment would be like sending a fishing boat into a hurricane. The Leviathan can defend itself, he said slowly, and her crew. More than that, General Rodriguez added. She can send a message. She can show the galaxy that Earth doesn't produce victims. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. When Earth's leaders finally voted, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would make its galactic debut not as a humble petitioner, but as a force to be reckoned with. 3 days later, Captain Webb stood on the bridge of the Leviathan as she prepared to make the jump to Nexus Station. His crew of 350 represented the best that humanity had to offer. Scientists, diplomats, engineers, and soldiers all working together for this historic mission. Captain, his communications officer called out, "We're receiving the final authorization from Earth Command." Webb nodded. "All stations report ready, sir," his executive officer announced. The captain looked out at the stars one last time as Earth's sun. In a few hours, they would be in alien space, representing not just themselves but their entire species. Whatever happened next would echo through history. "Take us out," he ordered. "Let's go show the galaxy what humanity is made of." The Arrival Senior Monitor Vextar was having what he considered a perfectly normal day until the alarm started screaming. He had been reviewing routine traffic reports from the outer system sensors when every display on his console suddenly flashed red. "What in the void of space?" he muttered, his 6 eyes darting between different readouts that all seemed to be telling him impossible things. According to his instruments, something massive had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Something very massive. Monitor Vextar, his junior assistant, called from across the control room. "Are you seeing these energy readings?" "I'm seeing them, but I don't believe them," Vextar replied, frantically checking his equipment for malfunctions. The numbers were beyond anything a primitive species should be able to generate. Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array. These readings have to be wrong. But the diagnostic came back clean. Whatever had just arrived was real, and it was putting out enough energy to power a small moon. Captain Jixnall of the escort frigate Dawn's Hope was enjoying what he expected to be an easy assignment. Pick up the primitive humans, guide them to the station, maybe chat about their crude technology and their simple culture. It was the kind of boring duty that junior officers got stuck with, and he had been looking forward to getting it over with quickly. That was before the Leviathan appeared. When the human ship dropped out of hyperspace, Captain Jixnall's first thought was that the primitives had somehow stolen an advanced warship. His second thought was that he was about to die. The human vessel was enormous. It dwarfed his frigate like a shark next to a minnow. 800 meters of angular, predatory design that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Every surface was covered with weapon mounts, sensor arrays, and equipment that his ship's computer couldn't even identify. "Captain," his sensor officer called out in a voice that was trying very hard not to sound panicked, "I'm reading massive power signatures from that vessel. Railgun systems, plasma cannons, some kind of energy shield that I've never seen before." Are those missile tubes?" his weapons officer asked, pointing at a series of dark openings along the human ship's hull. Captain Jixnall stared at the monster that had just materialized in his quiet little patrol zone and wondered if he should run or surrender. The humans had sent what could only be described as a purpose-built instrument of war to what was supposed to be a peaceful first contact. Then the human ship opened communications. "Alien vessel, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Defense Ship Leviathan," came a calm, professional voice over the radio. "We are responding to your government's invitation to meet at Nexus Station. Request escort and docking instructions." The voice was steady, measured, and completely polite. It was also coming from someone who was sitting inside enough firepower to level a small city, and he sounded like he was asking for directions to the grocery store. This is Captain Jixnall of the Dawn's Hope," he managed to reply. Welcome to the Nexus system. We're here to escort you to the station." "Understood, Dawn's Hope. We appreciate the escort. Our sensors show additional vessels in the area." "Are these part of your defense grid?" Captain Jixnall looked at his sensors. The humans were already mapping the entire system, cataloging every ship, every station, every defense platform within sensor range. They weren't just following diplomatic protocol, they were gathering intelligence. "Those are routine patrol vessels and civilian traffic," he answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Copy that. We'll follow your lead to the station. Leviathan out." As they began the journey toward Nexus Station, Captain Jixnall found himself studying the human ship more closely. The thing was a masterpiece of military engineering. Every line, every curve, every surface seemed designed for maximum effectiveness in combat. This wasn't a ship that had been converted for diplomatic use. This was a warship operating in its natural element. Back on Nexus Station, the control room was in chaos. Monitor Vexistar was fielding calls from a dozen different departments, all of them asking the same question. What exactly were the humans bringing to their peaceful first contact meeting? "It's definitely a military vessel," Dr. Kethalar reported over the communication link. "Our analysis shows weapon systems that rival our own fleet units. This isn't some primitive species stumbling into space. These humans know what they're doing." Ambassador Veltar was pacing back and forth in her office, occasionally pausing to stare out at the approaching human ship. "Why would they send a warship to a diplomatic meeting?" "Maybe they don't trust us," suggested Counselor Jaxrin. "Their planet is on the outer rim, far from any civilized systems. For all they know, we could be pirates or raiders pretending to be diplomats. Or maybe," Dr. Kethalar added grimly, "they've been monitoring our communications for longer than we think. Maybe they know about our politics, our conflicts, our military capabilities. Maybe they decided that showing strength was better than showing weakness." The implications were disturbing. If the humans had been listening to galactic communications, they would have heard about the endless border disputes, the trade wars, the occasional shooting conflicts between species that were supposed to be allies. They would have learned that the galaxy was not the peaceful utopia that the Council liked to present to new species. As the Leviathan approached the station, more details became visible. The ship's hull was covered in a matte black coating that seemed to drink in light, making it difficult to track visually. Its weapon systems were obviously designed for long-range engagement, with massive railgun batteries that could probably punch through anything in the station's defensive grid. "They're scanning us," reported the station's security chief. "Deep scans. They're mapping our defensive systems, our internal structure, our power grid. This is military-grade intelligence gathering." "Should we object?" asked Monitor Vextar. "Object to what? They're not breaking any laws. And frankly, I'm not sure we want to start an argument with whatever civilization built that monster. The final approach to the station was a carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy and demonstration. The Leviathan followed proper protocols, requesting permission for each maneuver, acknowledging all communications. But every sensor on the station could feel the massive ship taking detailed measurements of everything around it. When the human ship finally docked, it did so with precision that spoke of extensive experience with complex operations. The docking clamps engaged smoothly, power connections linked seamlessly, and atmospheric pressure equalized without a hitch. These humans weren't fumbling around with unfamiliar technology. They knew exactly what they were doing. In the station's main conference room, emergency meetings were being called as various species. Representatives tried to figure out what humanity's choice of vessel meant for the carefully planned first contact ceremony. "This changes everything," muttered Ambassador Veltar. "We prepared for primitives seeking our guidance. Instead, we're hosting what appears to be a military reconnaissance mission. Maybe that's not a bad thing," suggested Dr. Kethalar. "Maybe the galaxy needs more species that can take care of themselves instead of needing constant protection." Outside the conference room windows, the Leviathan sat docked to the station like a sleeping predator. Its dark hull reflected none of the station's lights, making it appear almost ghostly against the backdrop of space. But everyone who looked at it could feel its presence. 800 meters of human engineering that had just announced to the galaxy that Earth was not interested in being anyone's junior partner. Captain Webb and his senior staff prepared to disembark for the formal first contact ceremony. He looked out at the alien station and smiled grimly. The aliens had expected a shuttle full of wide-eyed primitives. Instead, they had gotten humanity's most advanced warship and its most experienced crew. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth did not produce victims. It produced survivors, and survivors, as any student of human history could tell you, had a tendency to become something much more dangerous than that. Diplomatic tension. The grand ceremonial hall of Nexus Station had hosted first contact ceremonies for dozens of species over the centuries. The routine was always the same. Excited primitives would enter in small groups, eyes wide with wonder at the advanced technology around them. They would stumble through prepared speeches about how honored they were to meet the great galactic civilization. They would gratefully accept whatever basic technology and simple trade agreements the Council offered them. Captain Marcus Webb and his senior staff entered the hall like they owned it. Ambassador Veltar felt her confidence falter the moment she saw them. These weren't wide-eyed primitives overwhelmed by their first glimpse of advanced civilization. These were professional military officers conducting themselves with the quiet confidence of people who had seen dangerous situations before and lived through them. Captain Webb stepped forward and gave a respectful nod to the assembled alien dignitaries. "Ambassador Veltar, counselors, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'm Captain Webb, commanding officer of the UDS Leviathan. With me are Commander Sarah Chen, our diplomatic officer, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, our xenobiology specialist, and Chief Engineer David Park." The formal introduction was delivered with military precision, but what struck Veltar was what the humans didn't do. They didn't bow. They didn't express overwhelming gratitude. They didn't seem intimidated by the Grand Hall or the assembled representatives of dozens of advanced species. They acted like equals, meeting equals. "Captain Webb," Veltar began, falling back on her prepared speech. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you and your species to the greater galactic community. We are honored to guide humanity's first steps into the wider universe. We appreciate your welcome," Webb replied politely. "Though I should clarify that these aren't humanity's first steps into space. We've been operating in our local region for quite some time. This is simply our first formal contact with your organization." The distinction was subtle but important. The humans weren't presenting themselves as a species taking their first tentative steps beyond their home world. They were presenting themselves as an established civilization making contact with their neighbors. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward and activated a portable holographic display. "If I may, I'd like to present humanity's credentials and capabilities." What followed was not the fumbling presentation of a primitive species seeking acceptance. It was a professional briefing that demonstrated humanity's technological capabilities, industrial capacity, and scientific achievements. More disturbing for the Council, It included detailed analysis of galactic politics, trade routes, and military capabilities that could only have come from extensive intelligence gathering. "How long have you been monitoring our communications?" asked Counselor Jackson, trying to keep the alarm out of his voice. "Long enough to understand the basic structure of galactic civilization," Dr. Rodriguez replied smoothly. "We believe in being well informed before entering into any agreements." The humans had been spying on them. For months, possibly years, Earth had been intercepting galactic communications, studying alien technology, and analyzing the political situation before making contact. This was not the behavior of innocent primitives. This was the behavior of a species that understood the importance of information advantage. Ambassador Veltar tried to regain control of the situation by presenting humanity with the standard welcome package, basic technology gifts, simplified star charts, and trade agreements designed for junior species. Commander Chen examined the offered materials with polite interest before shaking her head. "Thank you, but Earth is interested in mutual exchange between equals, not charity. We have our own technology to offer, and we're looking for partnerships that benefit both parties." The rejection was diplomatic but firm. The humans weren't interested in being treated as primitives receiving gifts from their betters. They wanted to be treated as peers. "What exactly is Earth looking for in these negotiations?" asked Dr. Cathalar. "Standard diplomatic relations," Webb answered. "Trade agreements based on mutual benefit, information exchange, defense cooperation where interests align. The same things any sovereign civilization would want." "Defense cooperation?" Veltar seized on the phrase. "Are you expecting trouble?" Webb's expression remained neutral. "We're prepared for any possibility. Our analysis of galactic politics suggests that peaceful coexistence requires the ability to defend oneself when necessary." The statement sent a chill through the assembled aliens. The humans had studied galactic politics and concluded that military strength was necessary for survival. They hadn't come seeking protection. They had come prepared to provide it. The tension in the room spiked when Counselor Vorthak of the militaristic Zathari Empire decided to test the humans directly. "Your arrival in a warship suggests aggressive intentions. Many species might interpret this as a threat." Captain Webb turned to face the Zathari counselor, and for the first time since entering the hall, his professional demeanor showed a hint of steel. "Counselor, Earth sent the Leviathan because we believe in being prepared. Your reaction to our precautions suggests that we were wise to take them." The implied criticism was devastating. The humans were essentially saying that the galactic community was so unstable that sending a warship to a diplomatic meeting was a reasonable precaution. Worse, the aliens' reaction to that warship was proving the humans right. "Perhaps," Vorthak pressed, "you should have trusted in the peaceful intentions of the Council." "Perhaps," Webb replied calmly, "the Council should ask itself why a species on the outer rim would feel the need to arrive armed for a peaceful meeting." The exchange highlighted a fundamental difference in perspective. The aliens saw humanity's military approach as potentially aggressive. The humans saw it as common sense when dealing with unknown powers who might not have peaceful intentions. Dr. Rodriguez chose that moment to deliver another bombshell. "I should mention that the Leviathan isn't our only vessel in this system." The statement hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Long-range sensors immediately began sweeping the outer system, quickly detecting the massive energy signatures of additional human vessels positioned at strategic points throughout the system. "How many ships did you bring?" Veltar asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Enough," Webb answered simply. The implications were staggering. Earth hadn't sent a single ship on a desperate diplomatic mission. They had sent a battle group. They had positioned vessels throughout the system to provide overwatch and backup for their diplomatic team. They had treated First Contact not as a supplication for acceptance, but as a potential military operation requiring proper support. Commander Chen seemed to sense the growing tension and attempted to provide reassurance. "Earth has no aggressive intentions toward any member of the galactic community, but we will not be intimidated, threatened, or treated as anything less than equals. We come seeking friendship, but we're prepared to defend ourselves if necessary." The message was clear. Humanity wanted to join the galactic community, but only on their own terms. They wouldn't accept second-class status. They wouldn't be pushed around. And they had the military capability to back up their position. As the formal ceremony concluded, various alien factions began urgent private communications. The Hegemony Alliance, which had initially dismissed humanity as another primitive species, was now calculating the military implications of adding human ships to their defense agreements. The pacifist Ethereal Collective was worried about introducing another warrior species to galactic politics. The Zathari Empire was reassessing their own military capabilities in light of humanity's advanced warship design. In the space of a single meeting, Earth had gone from being an unknown primitive species to being recognized as a significant military power. They had forced the galactic community to acknowledge them as equals rather than subjects. As Captain Webb and his team prepared to return to the Leviathan, Veltar approached him privately. "Captain, may I ask you something?" "Of course, Ambassador. Why did your people really come here? What does Earth want from the galaxy?" Webb considered the question for a moment before answering. "The same thing every species wants, Ambassador. The right to exist in peace and security. The difference is that we're willing to fight for that right if necessary. And if the galaxy doesn't accept those terms?" Webb's smile was polite but cold. "Then the galaxy will have to learn to live with us anyway. We're not going anywhere." Show of strength. The attack came without warning, as attacks usually do. The merchant convoy was 3 hours out from Nexus Station, carrying medical supplies to a colony on the system's edge, when the pirates struck. 5 ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began jamming communications while demanding that the freighters prepare to be boarded. It was a routine robbery, the kind that happened dozens of times each month in the outer systems where Council patrols were light, and response times were measured in hours rather than minutes. The pirates had studied the area, watched the traffic patterns, and chosen their moment carefully. They knew the merchant ships were unarmed. They knew the nearest Council warships were too far away to intervene. They knew they had at least 30 minutes to complete their work before anyone could respond. What they didn't know was that the UDS Leviathan was conducting navigation exercises in the area. Captain Webb was reviewing diplomatic reports when the emergency alert came through. "Captain, we're detecting an attack on civilian vessels bearing 27 Mark IV. 5 unidentified ships are threatening a merchant convoy." Webb didn't hesitate. "Battle stations, all hands to combat positions, helm intercept course maximum speed." "Sir, we haven't been authorized to engage in combat operations," his executive officer pointed out. "Those are civilian vessels under attack in neutral space," Webb replied firmly. "We have every right to render assistance. Besides, I'm curious to see how our weapons perform against actual targets." The Leviathan dropped out of hyperspace like an avenging angel. One moment the pirates were confidently moving to board the helpless merchant ships. The next moment they were facing 800 meters of human military engineering, designed for exactly this kind of situation. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Webb of the United Defense Ship Leviathan," came the transmission on all frequencies. "You are attacking civilian ships in neutral space. Cease hostile actions immediately and withdraw, or you will be fired upon." The pirate captain, a Thakri raider named Gexkor who had been robbing merchant ships for 15 years, looked at the massive human warship and made the worst decision of his life. Instead of running, he decided to call the bluff. "Human ship. There are 5 of us and 1 of you. We suggest you mind your own business." "Acknowledged," Webb replied calmly. "You have been warned." What happened next became the subject of detailed analysis in military academies across the galaxy for decades afterward. The Leviathan opened fire with surgical precision. The first pirate ship simply vanished, vaporized by a direct hit from a plasma cannon that turned its hull into expanding gas in less than a second. The second ship managed to get its shields up before 3 railgun rounds punched through them, like they weren't there, leaving the vessel drifting helplessly with its reactor offline. The third and fourth ships attempted to flee, but the Leviathan's targeting systems had been designed to track multiple fast-moving targets in 3-dimensional space. Twin missile strikes caught both vessels before they could jump to hyperspace, leaving them broken and burning. The fifth ship, seeing the destruction of its companions, immediately broadcast its surrender. Total engagement time, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. On Nexus Station, the emergency response center erupted in controlled chaos as reports flooded in from the merchant ships. The human warship destroyed 4 pirate vessels and captured the 5th, reported the convoy leader. No casualties among our ships. The humans are requesting medical assistance for pirate survivors and asking if we need escort back to the station. Monitor Vexitar stared at his displays in disbelief. The Leviathan had appeared, eliminated 5 pirate ships in under 3 minutes, and was now offering humanitarian assistance to both the victims and the survivors of their attackers. It was the most professionally executed military operation he had ever witnessed. Dr. Kethalar was frantically reviewing the combat footage that the merchant ships had recorded. These humans, their weapons technology is at least 50 years ahead of anything we have in service. Look at these targeting systems. They were engaging multiple fast-moving targets simultaneously with perfect accuracy. How is that possible? Asked Ambassador Veltar. They're supposed to be a primitive species. Maybe they're not primitive, suggested Counselor Jaxerin grimly. Maybe they're just new to the galactic community. The implications were staggering. If Earth could build warships that could casually destroy experienced pirate raiders, what else were they capable of? How many other human ships were out there? What kind of civilization produced this level of military technology? Back aboard the Leviathan, Captain Webb was filing his after-action report with the same professional calm he might use to report a successful navigation exercise. 5 hostile vessels neutralized, 1 captured intact, 0 friendly casualties. Civilian convoy secured and resuming course to destination. Pirate survivors are receiving medical attention and will be turned over to station security upon return. To the crew of the Leviathan, this had been a minor skirmish, barely worth mentioning. They had encountered more dangerous situations during training exercises back home. But to the aliens watching, it had been a demonstration of military capability that fundamentally changed their understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. Within hours, the news had spread throughout Nexus Station and beyond. The primitive humans who had arrived in a single crewed vessel had just eliminated an entire pirate squadron without breaking stride. The species that was supposed to need protection and guidance had instead provided protection for galactic civilians. Emergency sessions were called in the council chambers as various factions tried to process what they had witnessed. We need to reassess everything we know about human military capabilities, Dr. Kethalar reported to the assembled counselors. Their ship-to-ship combat doctrine is unlike anything we've seen. They engage at maximum range with devastating firepower, coordinate multiple weapon systems simultaneously, and maintain perfect tactical awareness throughout the engagement. Counselor Vorthok of the Zathari Empire was studying tactical recordings with the eye of an experienced military commander. These humans fight like they've been doing it for centuries. This wasn't luck or advanced technology compensating for inexperience. This was professional military action by a species that understands warfare. But they're from the Outer Rim, protested Ambassador Veltar. How could an isolated species develop this level of military sophistication? Maybe they weren't isolated, suggested Dr. Kethalar. Maybe Earth has been fighting wars we know nothing about. Their own species, perhaps, or other threats in their region of space. The possibility was deeply disturbing. If humanity had been engaged in serious military conflicts, they would have developed not just advanced weapons, but advanced tactics, strategy, and military doctrine. They would be a warrior culture disguised as peaceful explorers. As reports of the engagement spread throughout the galaxy, various species began reaching out to Earth through diplomatic channels. The Hegemony Alliance, suddenly very interested in human military technology, began drafting mutual defense proposals. Smaller species that had been victims of pirate raids were requesting human patrols in their territory. Even the isolationist Ethereal Collective was quietly inquiring about purchasing human-built defense systems. In the space of a single combat engagement, Earth had gone from being an unknown primitive species to being recognized as a significant military power that other civilizations wanted as an ally. Captain Webb, reviewing the flood of diplomatic communications, turned to Commander Chen. I thought we came here for first contact, not to become the galaxy's police force. Maybe that's what they need, Chen replied thoughtfully. Someone willing to act when civilians are in danger. And maybe that's what we needed too, Webb added. A chance to prove that Earth doesn't just produce explorers and diplomats. We produce protectors. Outside the ship's windows, Nexus Station bustled with activity, as various alien species worked to establish formal relations with humanity. But in the depths of space, other ships were moving. Human ships taking up positions throughout the system, ready to respond to any threat. The galaxy was beginning to understand that Earth hadn't come seeking protection. They had come offering it. And in a universe full of dangers, that offer was looking more attractive by the hour. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cold metal window of her laboratory on Titan. The stars looked different here, so far from Earth. Each point of light represented a world that humanity could never truly reach. Not because the technology didn't exist, but because the law forbade it. The Galactic Council had made the rules clear 50 years ago when they first contacted Earth. No ship could travel faster than twice the speed of light. The veil barriers made sure of that. These strange energy walls surrounded every star system like invisible cages. Any ship that tried to go faster would simply explode. Sarah had spent her entire career studying these barriers. The Council said they were natural, like gravity or magnetism. They claimed the barriers protected younger species from the dangers of deep space. But Sarah had always wondered why protection looked so much like a prison. Still staring at the walls of our cage, Commander Marcus Torres walked into the lab, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He was a tall man with dark hair and eyes that never stopped questioning everything around him. Sarah took the coffee and smiled. The council inspector arrives tomorrow. We should probably hide the real research. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me guess. Inspector Zethkalar wants to see our approved experiments again. The ones that go nowhere and discover nothing. For months, Sarah and her team had been working on something the council would never approve. They had found something impossible in the data. The veil barriers weren't natural at all. They were machines. Massive, ancient machines hidden in deep space. Sarah walked to her computer and pulled up the secret files. Look at this again, Marcus. The energy signatures from the barriers. They're too perfect, too organized. Nature doesn't work like this. Marcus studied the screen. The patterns showed clear signs of artificial construction. Energy flows that followed mathematical rules. Power sources that seemed to come from specific points in space. How long have you been working on this? He asked. 2 years. But I think I know where the power comes from now. Sarah pulled up a star map. Red dots marked the locations of barrier generators throughout the galaxy. See these patterns? The generators are always near dead zones in space, places where stars used to be. Marcus felt his heart racing. You think they're using collapsed stars as power sources? More than that. I think whoever built these things is still out there, still controlling them. The Council isn't in charge of the galaxy. Someone else is, and they're using the Council to keep us all trapped. The lab fell silent except for the hum of computers. Both scientists understood what this meant. If the barriers were artificial, they could be turned off. Or bypassed. Sarah, if you're right about this, Marcus started. I am right. I've been tracking the energy flows for months. But there's more. She pulled up another file. I know how to get around them. The screen showed complex equations and diagrams. Sarah had discovered that the barriers worked by detecting ships that moved too fast through normal space. But what if a ship didn't move through space at all? What if it folded space instead? Space-time folding, Marcus whispered. You want to bend the universe and not bend it, just make it smaller. For a moment. If we can collapse the distance between 2 points, we never actually travel fast. We just step from one place to another. Marcus stared at the equations. As a military commander, he understood the implications better than most. If humans could bypass the speed limits, they could explore the galaxy freely. They could find the truth about who was really in control. The Council will never allow this, he said. Then we don't tell them. Over the next few hours, Sarah explained her plan. They would need a small ship, and a crew willing to risk everything. They would have to work in complete secrecy. If the Council discovered what they were doing, humanity would face punishment beyond imagination. But if they succeeded, they might free not just humanity, but every species trapped by the barriers. Marcus made his decision. How many people do you need? 20. Scientists and engineers who can keep their mouths shut. I can get them. Military people who ask the right questions. Marcus looked at the star map again. Where do we test this? Sarah pointed to a region of space beyond Pluto. There. Far enough from Earth that if something goes wrong, we won't take anyone else with us. They spent the rest of the night planning. By morning, they had the basics of humanity's most dangerous experiment. They would build a fold space drive in secret. They would test it away from prying eyes. And if it worked, they would use it to find the truth about the galaxy. The next day, Inspector Zethkalar arrived on schedule. He was a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 6 arms. His species had been part of the Council for over 1,000 years. To him, humans were still children who needed constant watching. Dr. Chen, Zethkalar said in perfect English, I trust your research continues to follow approved guidelines. Sarah smiled and showed him the fake experiments. Projects that studied the barriers from the outside, never questioning their nature or origin. Research that would never threaten the established order. Very good, the inspector said after reviewing the false data. Humanity shows proper respect for galactic law. Continue your work within approved limits. After Zethkalar left, Sarah and Marcus began recruiting their secret team. They chose carefully. Each person had to be someone who questioned authority, someone who would risk everything for the chance at truth. Dr. James Wright, a physicist who had always wondered why certain areas of space seemed forbidden. Lieutenant Maria Santos, a pilot who had pushed her ship to the very edge of the speed limit just to see what would happen. Engineer David Kim, who had spent years studying Council technology and finding it strangely limited. One by one, they joined the project. Each person understood that they were committing treason against not just the Galactic Council, but against the established order of the universe itself. The work took months. They built their fold space drive in pieces, spreading the construction across multiple hidden facilities. The device was small but incredibly complex. It would bend space-time just enough to step from one point to another without ever actually moving fast. As they worked, Sarah made more discoveries. The barriers weren't just limiting speed. They were slowly getting smaller. Every few hundred years, the energy walls moved closer to each star system. Species were being compressed into smaller and smaller areas. It's not protection, she told Marcus one night as they worked alone in the lab. It's a trap. Someone is slowly crushing the entire galaxy. Marcus looked at the data and felt cold fear in his stomach. How long do we have? At current rates? Maybe 2,000 years before the barriers compress so much that most worlds become uninhabitable. Unless we stop it. Unless we find who's doing it and make them stop. 3 months later, their ship was ready. The breakthrough looked like a normal human vessel from the outside. Inside, it carried technology that would either free the galaxy or get them all killed. The team gathered on Titan for their final meeting. 20 humans who were about to break the most fundamental law in the galaxy. Once we do this, there's no going back, Marcus told them. The Council will hunt us. Our own government might disown us. But if we succeed, we might save every species in the galaxy. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her teammates. She saw fear, excitement, and determination. These were the people who would either free the galaxy or die trying. Let's go find out what's really out there, she said. The breakthrough launched that night, disappearing into the darkness between the stars. Behind them, they left no trace of their work. The laboratories were empty. The computers were wiped clean. When Inspector Zethkalar returned the following week for an unscheduled inspection, he found nothing but empty rooms and missing humans. For the first time in 1,000 years, he felt afraid.